Good morning, everyone. So today I'm going to be teaching you about a famous person from the Jewish faith, that is Anne Frank. And I'm really excited to talk to you about Anne Frank because she's a hero of mine. She's an incredibly amazing person, and her story is one that everybody should know. So let's jump straight into it. I'm going to share my screen with you. Oh, there's some pictures of Anne Frank that I was just looking at. So to kick us off today, we're going to start with a little recap of the last famous person that we looked at on our last RE day, which was Mother Teresa. So I'd like you to pause the video and write down the answers to these 3 questions and then write down the words and their correct definition. So the first question, which religion did Mother Teresa follow? Write down your answer. 2, she learnt languages such as Hindi and Bengali. Why? Choosing your answer. And 3, what prize did she win? So pause the video, write down your answers. Once you've done that, come back and press play. Okay, so let's go through the answers. So Mother Teresa followed Christianity. She was a Roman Catholic. She learned languages such as Hindi and Bengali to teach poor girls. And number 3, which prize did she win? She won the Nobel Peace Prize. And for our definitions, a slum is a poor and crowded area, that is especially in a city. An orphanage is a home for somebody whose parents have died or cannot care for them. Vows are promises that nuns make to devote their lives to God and the church. And a missionary is someone sent on a religious mission to promote the religion in another country. So that was our Christianity person of faith. So today we're looking at a different religion, Judaism. So what do you know about this girl? I've already told you her name, but what else do you know? You can pause the video here and either find somebody or talk to somebody who's nearby you about what you know about this girl, or just think to yourself, what do you know? All right, once you've done that, come back and press play. Okay, so this is Anne Frank. She was very famous for a book that she wrote, and we're going to be talking about that book today and learning about her life. She was a follower of Judaism, meaning she was Jewish, and we're going to learn about her life and her experiences of being a Jewish person. So on January 27th, every year, we remember specific events in the past when people were treated badly and killed because of who they are. This is the Holocaust Memorial Day. Some of you may be familiar with what the Holocaust was, but I'm going to talk about it now. So the first word we need to know is genocide. The word is genocide. Genocide. So genocide is when a large number of people are killed on purpose or murdered, and that might be because of their race, their religion, or the color of their skin. Okay, so it's an incredibly sad thing. Now, the Holocaust was a genocide. So that means that the Holocaust, when we say the word Holocaust, what we mean is the murder of a large group of people. And this happened in the Second World War. And the group of people that were killed were Jewish people, people who followed the Jewish religion. They were murdered, okay? They were killed, and there was quite a huge number of people. So it's an incredibly sad event. And on the 27th of January, we remember that that happened, and we reflect on that and the atrocities of the past and what we can learn from that, okay? So it is quite a sad topic. But out of that, we've been able to learn quite some valuable lessons about how we think about other people and treat other people based on things that are different about them. Okay, so let's dive into when this happened and why. So it happened because of this man here and in the Second World War. So click on that. No, it's not turned on. That's fine. So 87 years ago, all right, a man called Adolf Hitler was the leader of the Nazi Party in Germany. So that was a political party. They were wanting to be in charge of the German people. Okay, so they fought for, just like we have the Conservatives is a political party, the Nazi Party started as a political party. That's how they started. Okay, and they began to invade other countries. All right, they wanted to expand their region. They wanted other bits of land, and they started invading other countries. And this kicked off the Second World War. There'd already been one World War in a decade earlier, and the Second World War happened because Germany and the people leading Germany, that is Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party, wanted more land. So they started invading other countries, and this started the Second World War. So what happened? Why did this happen? The Nazis believed that Jewish people, those are people who follow the Jewish religions or have parents who are Jewish or grandparents who are Jewish, they were the reason that Germany was struggling. It was their fault that Germany had problems. They were not as good as German people. They were inferior. So the Nazi Party believed that it was the Jewish people were causing problems in Germany. It wasn't true. It was their opinion. It wasn't true. And as a result, they started attacking them. What they did was that they made laws so that Jewish people couldn't own a business, couldn't go to school. They started making plans to get rid of all Jewish people in Europe. They wanted to get rid of the entire race. Okay, so it's a genocide because they were targeting these people based on their religion. It's incredibly wrong to do. It's racist. It's not appropriate. Absolutely not okay. But it's a form of prejudice. So let's have a look at what prejudice means. So the word is prejudice. Prejudice. Okay, so prejudice, this word here, okay, is when you treat a group of people very badly. So you might say mean things or untrue things about them, and it's done because of their race, their religion, or just something different about them. So you're prejudiced against somebody if you treat them differently or in a negative way because they're different from you. So Hitler and the Nazi Party, that's what they were doing. They were prejudiced against Jewish people. They treated them very badly. They made their lives absolutely unbearable because they had a different religion. Okay, so it's incredibly sad. So we're just going to have a bit of a reflection time. So I want you to have a think now. Why is this wrong? Why is it wrong to have prejudice against a group of people? Okay, so take a moment, you can pause the video if you'd like, have a think, you can write it down if you'd like. Why is it wrong to be prejudiced against a group of people? Okay, now that you've done that, so it's wrong because there is no group that is better than any other group. It is absolutely not okay to treat a group of people in a negative way just because they are different from yourself. It is just not appropriate because you're implying that they are lesser than you, which is not true. Okay, and the second question that we're going to reflect on is, can you think of any examples of prejudice towards groups of people in our generation in today? Because the World War II happened in 1945, quite a long time ago, it ended in 1945. So is prejudice still happening? Can you think of any examples of prejudice towards groups of people in our generation? So again, you can pause the video, like you'd have a think, have a chat to somebody if they're nearby you, or write it down. Can you think of any examples of prejudice towards groups of people in our generation? Okay, so maybe you thought of things like sexism, treating women as less than men, for example. Maybe you thought about issues to do with racism and how we've had issues with slavery all over the world. People of different skin colours, races or ethnicities being treated differently or worse because of something that they were born with, and it shouldn't be affecting them at all. Okay, so there are still really quite prominent examples of prejudice, and that we as a year group, as a class, and as just people need to be aware of this prejudice and working to address it. Okay, so quick quiz to see if you've been listening. Number one, when a large number of people are killed, especially because of their race, religion, or the colour of their skin, what is it called? A, Auschwitz, B, generate, or C, genocide. Shouting it out on 3, 2, 1, it is genocide. Number 2, who was Adolf Hitler? Saying it out loud on 3, 2, 1, the leader of the Nazi Party. Number 3, the Nazis believed that Jewish people were to blame for Germany's problems. True or false? Shouting it out on 3, 2, 1, true. Number 4, Nazis made a law that Jewish people couldn't do what? A, own a business or go to school. B, cook with pork. Or C, pray in a synagogue. Shouting out your answer on 3, 2, 1. Own a business or go to school. And our final question is, when you treat a group of people badly because of their race, religion, or difference, what do we call this? A, racist, B, prejudiced, or C, supremacist. Shouting out your answer on 3, 2, 1, prejudiced. Okay, so let's learn now about the actual person who experienced this. So the Frank family. So Anne Frank, this lovely little girl here, was born on the 12th of June 1929. She had an older sister called Margot and a mother called Edith, and her father was Otto. And they were Jewish, and they were living in Frankfurt, which is a city in Germany, when at the beginning of their lives, when all this started, all this prejudice against Jewish people. So it's Anne Frank. So when Otto, her father, realized that life was going to get very difficult for Jewish people, he moved his family to the Netherlands, or Holland as it's also known. Okay. So Anne was a very simple gal. There was nothing exceptional about her, just a normal gal. But on her 13th birthday, she was given a diary, and she was really excited about this because she loved writing and she wanted to be a famous writer. And she named her diary Kitty. And we've got a photo here. You can see her actually writing in it when she got it. And the original diary we still have. Okay, and you can see a photo of it down here. This is her original diary filled in with all her notes, all her conversations to herself or conversations with her diary. And you can actually go and see this. It's on display in a museum. Okay, so what happened to them? So the Nazis became worse and worse when it came to treating Jewish people. All right, they started rounding them up, as in capturing them and taking them to places, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. They were forced to leave their home and go and live in a concentration camp. All right, so the word is concentration camp. Concentration camp. So a concentration camp is a prison where large groups of people, of political prisoners, are kept. Okay, and these living conditions were awful. The conditions in concentration camps were dreadful, and the Frank family knew that it would be really dangerous for them, so they went into hiding, and they went into a secret room that was found behind this bookshelf here called the Annex. Okay, annex is another word for extra room, which was above Otto's office where he worked in Holland. Okay, the entrance was hidden by the bookcase, and some of Otto's colleagues were really incredibly loyal and brave, and they risked their lives to protect the Frank family because it was a crime, according to the Nazi government. According to them, it was a crime to protect Jewish people. But some of his colleagues were very brave, very loyal, and they did do that. They brought clothes and food and newspapers and things for them to do while they were in hiding. Okay, so let's have a look at the annex. So the family, Otto's family and Frank's family, the Frank family, they lived with 4 other people in one room for 2 years. It was very cramped and very uncomfortable. One of the friends who was helping the family was Mayep Giez. Okay, so Anne wrote about this woman, saying that she's also the one who brings 5 library books with her every Saturday. Ordinary people don't know how much books can mean to someone who is cooped up. So I'd like you to take a moment and I'd like you to think, what would you miss if you had to go into hiding for more than a year? What little things might you miss? Daily life. Maybe you'd miss opening the window and feeling the breeze on your face. Maybe you'd miss getting exercise or just going for a walk. So pause the video if you need some time. What simple things might you miss? All right, hopefully you've had a think about that and a reflection on that. So the Frank family were unable to go out. They were fearful, they were afraid of being arrested or killed. They had to be absolutely silent, and the curtains were closed all day because nobody could see them. If they got spotted, they'd be caught. And Anne wrote, "Not being able to go outside upsets me more than I can say, and I'm terrified our hiding place will be discovered and that we will be shot." Which was a real threat. This was a real possibility for Anne and her family. So maybe you felt that things you might miss would be going to school, missing out on interacting with other children, maybe just seeing the sunshine. There's lots of little things that you would really miss if you had to go into hiding. So you can really start to empathize and feel how hard it was for Anne Frank and her family. So what did she miss? So people in the annex had to miss everyday things and they had to be quiet. So Anne wrote in her diary quite often. She wrote things like, "I long to ride a bike, to dance, whistle and look at the world, feel young and know that I'm free. Most of all, I long to have a home of our own, to be able to move around freely and have someone help me with my homework again at last. In other words, to go back to school." Okay, so in her diary, it really gives us, or by reading her diary, it really gives us an understanding of what life was like for the Jewish people during the Holocaust. Incredibly difficult. Now, the last time that Anne ever wrote in her diary was the 1st of August 1944. Okay. Now, what happened 3 days later after that, so the 4th of August, Anne and her family were found by the Nazis and they were arrested. Okay, they weren't shot on sight, but they were arrested and they were taken. They were taken to a concentration camp, which is called Auschwitz. Okay, so Auschwitz is probably one of the most, if not the most famous concentration camp. You can still actually visit it. And it was a prison for political prisoners, where Jewish people were forced to go and do horrible, dangerous work. They were not given enough food or water or medicine or warm clothes, and millions of people were killed in these concentration camps. If you got sick from a disease, there wouldn't be any doctor or hospital for you to go to. You could die from things like a simple cold, okay? You could die from freezing because it was really cold and you weren't given enough warm clothes. So it was a horrendous situation for these people to be in, okay? This is the reality of genocide. So what happened to Anne? Anne's mother was killed in Auschwitz. She died there. Anne and Margot were taken to another concentration camp called Bergen-Belsen, and they both became really ill with something called typhus, which is a horrible disease, and they both died. And Otto, who we can see down here on the right, was the only family member who survived the Holocaust. Now remember that Anne was found and captured in 1944, and the war ended in 1945, so they almost made it. In 1945, the war ended, Germany was defeated, and everyone who was in a concentration camp and still alive, they were released. So Otto returned to his now home. He didn't go back to Germany, he went to Holland instead. All right, so why did Anne become famous? Well, Miep Gez, who was the friend who had been helping Otto and his family, she found Anne's diary in the annex once they had been arrested, and she kept it safe. And she gave Otto the diary, and he decided to publish it in honor. So in 1947, 2 years later, a book called A Diary of a Young Girl was published, and you can still read that today. We have it in our library, and I would highly recommend it. It's a wonderful story. So Anne became famous after her death, which is quite sad. She became the famous writer that she wanted to, and she became famous because we can read her diary. So what I'd like you to do is we're going to put these events in order. What happened to Anne Frank and her family? So I've got Otto moves the family to Holland. Anne and her family went into hiding in a room above Otto's office. Margot and Anne became ill and die in a concentration camp. Anne Frank becomes an author. Anne's mother is killed in Auschwitz. Anne was given a diary. Otto returns home to the Holland, and years later publishes Anne's diary. Anne and her family are discovered by Nazis. Anne is born, and Anne and her family went into hiding. So I'd like you to pause the video and write in order each of these events. So that way in your book on a piece of paper, you know what happened to Anne Frank and her family. So pause the video now. Once you've done that, come back and we're going to go through the answers. Okay, now that you've done that, let's have a look. So what are the events? So we have, number 1, Anne is born. Number 2, Otto has to move the family to Holland because there's persecution or attacking of Jewish people. Number 3, Anne was given a diary for her 13th birthday. Number 4, Anne and her family go into hiding in a secret room above Otto's office. And number 5, they stay in hiding for 2 years. Number 6, Anne and her family are discovered by the Nazis and taken to concentration camps. Number 7, Anne's mother is killed in Auschwitz. Number 8, Margot and Anne become ill and die in a concentration camp. And number 9, Otto returns home to Holland and years later publishes Anne's diary. And last but not least, 10, Anne becomes the famous author that she always wanted to be. So we can learn a lot from Anne, okay, by reading her diary. So her legacy, a legacy is something you're remembered for. So Anne's legacy is that her book has been translated into 70 languages and been read by millions of people. And her writing is so important because we can learn and understand what it was like to live in Nazi Germany, to be afraid all the time that you were going to be killed for believing or following the religion that you were going to follow. She dreamed of becoming a famous author, and she did, but she had it after she died. Her words have empowered young people. They've given them strength to stand up against prejudice, racism, and discrimination. She's an inspiration to everybody. Okay, one of her most famous quotes is that I still believe I still believe in spite of everything that people are truly good at heart. Imagine for a minute that you've been in hiding for 2 years, that people want to kill you because of the religion that you follow, and then still being able to say, I believe people are good. That takes a huge amount of courage and kindness, and Anne Frank is somebody that we should all aspire to be. Okay, so time for one more reflection. How could you use your words to do good in our world today? So I'd like you to discuss with a partner, think about it to yourself, or write it down. How can you use your words to do good in a world today? Pause the video now and come back once you've had a chance to do that. Okay, hopefully you've had a think, but how can we use our words? Well, we can stand up to injustices. When we see something or see somebody who is being prejudiced towards another person, treating them unfairly, being unkind because of something that's different about them, we can stand up and say something. It's important that we spot those things and that we say something, that we're not passive. Okay, we can also only use positive words, saying kind things to people, making people feel valued and included, even if they're different from us. What we say has a really big impact on people. So hopefully we can take away from our lesson today that it's so important that we are careful with our words and how we treat other people. So to wrap it up today, we're just going to do our final activity, and we're going to consider what are the similarities between Mahatma Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and Anne Frank. So have a think. I'd like you to write down 2 things that are similar about all these 3 people. In case you've forgotten, okay, Mahatma Gandhi was very famous for fighting racism in India and for standing up against injustices that he saw. Mother Teresa was a Roman Catholic nun who went to other countries to share her religion, but also to look after poor people, people who couldn't afford medicine or things that they needed to be healthy. And Anne Frank, you've just learned about. So writing down 2 or 3 things that are similar about those people. And once you've done that, come back and press play. Okie dokie, hopefully you've written down a few things, but maybe you came up with something like they all believed in non-violence, that you could solve problems without resorting to violence. People all over the world have been inspired by their lives, their words, and they try to live like these people. Or that their words have helped people to stand up to prejudice and to look after those who are less fortunate. So we can see that people of faith all have that commonality, that they want to look after other people, that they are inspirational in their lives. So last but not least, we're going to have a quick quiz about Anne Frank. Okay, here we go. So writing down your answers in your book, so you can pause the video, write down your answers. I'm just going to read the questions out loud for you. Number 1, which religion did Anne Frank follow? Buddhism, Judaism, Hinduism, or Christianity? Number 2, when was Anne Frank born? 1929, 1989, 1950, or 1945? Number 3, how did Anne Frank die? She was killed by Nazis, she died of old age, she died of typhus in a concentration camp, or she fell off a cliff. And then doing your vocabulary review, you've got 4 words: concentration camp, prejudice, Nazi, and Jewish. Can you match up those words with the correct definition? So pause the video, writing down your answers, and once you've done that, coming back and pressing play. Okay, so our answers. Which religion did she follow? Judaism. When was Anne Frank born? 1929. How did she die? She died of typhus in a concentration camp. And our words with their definition: a Nazi is a member of the political party led by Adolf Hitler. A concentration camp is a prison camp in which large numbers of political prisoners are kept and sometimes killed. Jewish is somebody who follows Judaism. And prejudice is when you treat a group of people badly or say mean or unfair things about them because of their race, religions, or something different about them. Okay, lovely. So that is the end of our lesson today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about Anne Frank. If you can, talk to a grown-up or somebody else in your family about what you've learned today. Share with them and maybe the lessons that you've taken away by learning about Anne Frank's life. And if you get a chance, I would highly recommend reading The Diary of Anne Frank. It's a wonderful book. Have a lovely day and I will see you later. Have a great day. Bye.